Nia navis volatanus anguillus tana est, and welcome to the youth political podcast that is PolitiBabble, where this week it is all about the EU.
I'm Oliver, and as usual, I'm joined by my wonderful co-host Archibald, as well as today's guest panellist, Ailish. Hello, Ailish.
Hello.
Yeah, so we're back today, and if you did wonder what my opening was, it was, I am in my hovercraft is full of eels. Yeah, slightly obscure. But yeah, welcome, Ailish, to the wonderful podcast that's PolitiBabble.
Thank you.
Yes, nice to have you here. We do come to the most important questions we ask all our guests. If you were a cake, what cake would you be?
I thought that was what the cake question meant, and I thought about it, and I have decided that I would be a lemon drizzle cake.
Ah, I mentioned that last week, didn't I?
You did, Oliver. Any reason why?
Yes, because I think I can be sweet, but I can also be a bit sour, and I can have an edge to me, and I like to stand out, we should say.
That's exactly what I said.
I must say that's an excellent answer, I must say, yes. Got up to anything fun the past week? Or
I've been working, so not really, no.
No.
Unfortunately, no.
No. How about you, Oliver?
Not particularly, no. Just the standard, being off school.
I'm the opposite. I'm on school. I'm the only one here still enrolled in school to do the joyful of learning. But yes, I suppose it does bring us to this week's topic, which I am now playing the EU anthem. I didn't know they had an anthem, so I researched it, and it's based on Beethoven's Ode to Joy. Mm-hmm. And we addressed the question of this week: is the EU a broken institution? So, Oliver, what is the EU?
Well, the EU is the European Union, and it is a political and economic union, which consists of, I think, 20-something countries, 27, I think.
Yeah. I think, I'm not quite sure. I should know the number.
I think it is
27, it's probably about 27, because the UK left on the Brexit issue, which I'm sure we'll come to. But its origins, I think, started from the original idea after the Second World War, trying to have this union, this European cold and kind of economic area. They moved to the EEA, which is the European Economic Area, and then the EU, which is kind of what I called it's a bloated bureaucratic union. But I'm sure we'll have plenty of separate views about that. So we do some. It's kind of we all know what the EU is. It exists in our lives. It existed on our passports until last year as the European Union on the front of our lovely burgundy passports, which are now blue. So we do.
You had to get that in, didn't you? You had to include the blue passport.
Blue passport. Yeah. So what do we think? I think that's a fun question. What do you think of blue passport?
Oh, not much particularly. Are you talking about just a blue passport?
Yeah,
or
the blue passport, or maybe what it entails.
Well, my passport's currently out of date, so I need to get a new one. So, yeah.
I will not be getting a beautiful new blue passport because I have an Irish passport.
Ah, nice.
Which are
they black? Are they?
They are. I think they're still burgundy. I think they're burgundy. Yeah,
right.
But they have a different symbol on the front. I think there's a shield or some sort of animal.
I thought it was like I always viewed it as
it's a harp.
It's a
harp. It's a harp.
I thought it could have been a shield. I just.
Nope, it's a harp. You're right.
There we are.
You're correct.
So will that make it easier for you to travel around?
Oh, I hope so. Yeah.
But does so? The UK leaving. I know going off. I always say this, going off on a bit of a tangent. But does the UK leaving the European Union have an effect on me with an Isle of Man passport?
I suppose so. Yes, because you're still holding for a British passport. So when you go to the EU, you're obliged by the agreement. But I think it's still we just can't go. I'm not travelled to the EU, thankfully. Mm-hmm. Well, unfortunately because of COVID, so I couldn't tell you the experiences of it. But I think it's generally pretty similar to what we did have before. We just can't obviously work. Don't have a right to work for so long in the EU. Yeah. We don't have a right to indefinite leave to remain, which is quite interesting. But obviously, we do come to the key point of Brexit. So, what are your views on the Brexit? It kind of is the epitome of why the UK left, because I suppose 51% of the roughly 51% of the population thought that the EU was kind of broken institution for the United Kingdom. He heeded our kind of view, and the other 49 disagreed and thought we should remain in. So what are your views, firstly, on Brexit? Ailish?
Well, I am of the belief that we should have stayed in the European Union. And the actual subject of Brexit itself and how it started is quite interesting, I think, as David Cameron didn't even want to leave the EU himself. But to please his party members, he decided to have a referendum, which fueled just more and more Euroscepticism, which kind of just propelled this whole idea of Brexit and how we should leave. That's my belief.
And then he resigned, didn't he? Because he didn't want to have to fulfill the negotiations. And then you had Theresa May come in. I tried 2 times and I could not do it. And then obviously Boris came in, and Boris, wanted to get the job done.
Yeah.
Boris, yes, uses whiff-waff skills to get our British negotiation. I'm sure you've heard of whiff-waff.
And obviously, he said a few times it's going to be done by this date, and it didn't happen.
But that was mainly to do with Parliament. And then he said, "Well, the UK government is really odd. You had lots of remaining within the UK Parliament saying we don't want to leave the EU." So they would keep on blocking these deals. So it's quite interesting. There was that view in the political community at the time that the EU was this good institution. I suppose that's now changed since the election. There's a lot more Eurosceptic MPs in saying, obviously, get Brexit done was a key message there. So what? Obviously, I guess you think the EU is kind of. Do you think it's a good institution on the whole? Do you think it's failing, or?
I think
the tough question.
It is a difficult question because in some areas, definitely, the EU doesn't work, but in other areas, I think it was a really good idea. I think the foundation of it was a good thing at the time, and I think that somehow along the way, over time, the idea of it has completely changed, and it has become a little bit more corrupt. So for me, I think the issue lies in the EU itself and how we have to sort it out rather than how we should exit, because I think there could be so many repercussions from Brexit.
So it's more focusing on kind of fixing. I can agree. I can agree to principle. The original part of the EU is kind of using that European unity to stop another European war. Because obviously Germany invaded France, and there's always been a lot of European tension throughout history. Britain and France are famous enemies within that. So the EU did kind of solve that in a way by trying to smooth over these tracks.
Yeah.
But I personally don't view. I think it's gone too far that it can be reformed. We see kind of, I suppose, the European Medicines Agency kind of, I suppose, kind of brought that to attention, because the European Medicines Agency was quite slow in vaccination. Obviously, if we'd remained part of the EU, we've seen kind of the benefits of having independent nations being able to make their own policy decisions on vaccination or medical use, and we can say, actually, we're going to approve this vaccine with our own regulator. We're going to get in. Put in our own order separate from the EU because we're not in the EU, and it's proven to be a success. I suppose that's quite an interesting.
I suppose with the European Union, it's this idea of, although it's a union, it doesn't, and they're trying to say we're all together in this. Is that the UK was a major contributor to the budget of the EU and actually paid a lot more than other countries, and I suppose that's another reason why they wanted out of it. But it just shows that, you've only got to look at, the COVID jabs as being in the EU isn't always a positive, for we're in this together, it's going to be okay. On your own, you can do things well. But then there's other things, I hear all the time from people, oh yeah, that's because we've left the EU. We are starting to see, everyone thought at first when we were going to leave the EU there'd be catastrophic events to happen, and
the country would explode.
Not only that, we'd find major problems. Obviously, we did have the big lorry build-up, didn't we?
Yes, that was the motorway turned into a lorry, but at an airfield as well. An airport, just the whole runway was just chock-a-block with lorries. I must say, regardless of its obviously awful implications, it did create some good photography. There's always the horrible thing. There's always the horrible thing about kind of all horrible events. They do usually create some quite amazing photography because it never happens. You can then take these amazing pictures. But I think that does prove kind of key aspects of kind of switching over models. So I suppose the EU does have, it's obviously that shows its kind of its benefits within the union is having that freedom of trade, although it does kind of limit its system, kind of negotiating with other countries. So we saw a success of the EU today, where kind of Biden for the US and the EU, they suspended their tariffs over different Airbus supplements, kind of subsidies from the government, from the EU, and then Boeing subsidised by the US. Kind of those arguments that was kind of stalled. So I think I'd argue on the whole it's a broken system because there's a lack of democracy within it.
Yes,
lots of them are bureaucrats who aren't elected by the member states. But I can agree with you in principle that there's that kind of egalitarian view that we have, that unity brought together through Europe. I think that's interesting.
Yeah.
One thing that I'd like to sort of say is how they have there's a big thing, a positive you could say from the European Union is with human rights and stuff like that. And I think I'm right in saying that the Isle of Man was forced by the European Human Rights Convention, to legalise or to decriminalise in 1991 the homosexuals sort of problem that was going on there.
Yeah.
And it's all about the fundamental human rights that
here's where the EU gets really interesting, because there's actually two institutions which we associate with the EU. We associate the things like the European Court on Human Rights. And the European ECHR, which
I
does the European
was
Convention
going
on
to
Human
say,
Rights.
are they? They're not the same thing, are they? No.
The European Union is really odd,
and
because it's the Council of Europe is the original body formed, which kind of was the UK is still in, and that kind of is a body of unity. I've only just remembered to mention this. There's the Council of Europe, which they all sit on and kind of discuss, and then that has the ECH, so that's the European Court of Justice, and all of that, which is the separate entities from the EU, and then the EU provides like it's almost like an economic trade bloc, and then immigration bloc. It's really odd.
So they are not joined,
no.
or they're not. They're not in any way connected. So I do apologise there. I was incorrect.
Well, I think they're slightly.
But I suppose it's a good thing to learn, because other people might have the same
idea. Yeah.
Same idea, but
the European Court of Justice then is EU legislation.
Yeah.
Which is why
it's all bureaucracy, isn't it?
Yeah. That's why I take an interesting view. I'm not at heart anti. I don't think anyone's anti-Europe within it, but it's kind of anti the EU establishment. I suppose you might agree. There's the EU establishment, which is separate from kind of the USWACs, because there are USWACs at the EU. You mentioned them already. I think that there's certainly something interesting.
So I'm right in saying that doesn't the president of the EU change every 6 months, something to give countries a fair balance in leadership of it. I'm pretty sure
it's every 6 months.
Yeah, which is a weird thing to do, isn't it? This is why I'm not so keen on it. I do see the positives behind it, but I do feel like it does disturb.
Ignore me. It is 6 months.
Yes, yeah.
But that's the president of the council.
Right.
So they have two separate bodies. The council is unelected by the people, and the parliament's elected by the people. It's heavily, I think, over bureaucratic. That kind of opposes the kind of failings of it. Because
but it was, and I suppose it's now gone into this thing where, it's, well, you've had this sort of thing when it was to create peace, and it was to create fair economic balance and all this. But why is it that you think we should have stayed? Like, what are the reasonings? Like, what are the main factors to sort of make you think this is why we should stay? Because I've sort of mentioned a few positive and negatives, and obviously not all of them being right, but
well, one of the main positives I would want to talk about was the trade links. You've mentioned that before, and you've also mentioned how now we can trade with the US, for example. However, I think it's important to mention just how great the trade links were between Britain and Europe, and they were so good, in fact, that they reduced the cost of living for each person living in the UK by £100 every single week.
Which is good.
That is amazing.
And you look at, obviously, we've got the vaccines, which is positive on our behalf, and obviously the Isle of Man getting an equal share of the on percentage rate of the UK. But meats is another thing, which has gone up ridiculously.
I have an interesting point to propose there, because there is kind of economic arguments for the EU. The EU trade a lot with us, we trade a lot with them, so we do have a Brexit deal which does kind of help with that trade agreement, but there isn't, I think, any discernible economic impact. If you look at the IMF data, it doesn't show kind of that macroeconomic impact on Britain. At least 10 years afterwards, we won't really be seeing that impact, and it is a lot of focus kind of on kind of widget economics, because it's focusing on the tangible trade. We see in the modern world kind of the exposition more towards the trade of data, so data and all the stuff in the cloud, which it just confounds me how this data is kind of the new trading thing. We don't trade cloth, we don't trade food as much. Well, obviously food is very important, but to make the economy, it's all data.
Yeah.
And it doesn't necessarily focus on that, or the data which is put out. So the models which were kind of projected are slightly different. But I think it's important to know we are still getting a trade deal with the EU. Yeah. Which I suppose does kind of limit those impacts from it. Well, apart from trade, do you think there's major other benefits?
Well, on a personal level, travel for me.
Of course, that is.
Yeah, it's always going to be about travel.
Yeah.
People always want to travel. It's always going to be about travel. So obviously, I'm studying in Belfast next year, starting in September, and I'm doing French, and with that, I get a year abroad in France with the Erasmus programme. However, because of Brexit, there have been a few I don't know, difficulties exactly with this program, and will it even go ahead? Can I not spend a year in France on my course? And will I have to apply for a visa?
I suppose, and that's the whole thing, because you're going for a year. If it was 3 weeks, if it was 6, maybe if it was more than I don't know how. I think it's
about
how long,
9 months.
There you go. I think, and that's probably why there is the problems behind it.
So I'm gonna be total opposite to my usual views. I do actually agree that there is the one major upside to the EU is travel. If I was to, let's say, spend a year and I want to spend a gap year in France working, that then becomes a lot harder, because I have to apply for a work visa and all of that. Because it's more than 9 months there, you have to apply for the visas. So I think I agree, it does come a lot more complicated. And obviously, standing in passport lines, you get the joys of standing in a line for all passports rather than just for the EU citizens.
Yes.
Though interestingly, when I've gone to Spain, you go in and you stand in line. I always want to go in the all passport line because it looks shorter. But what you don't realise is there's loads more checks with it. Yeah. Yes, I think I would say spending a year in France does sound lovely. They have very nice food, nice wine, nice cheese. Yeah.
Yep.
I suppose that is the key.
It would be more. It would be a lot easier if we had remained, obviously, but you can't base that massive choice off a few students who want to live in France for a year. But it's crazy to think, because even though the UK wasn't part of the Schengen situation anyway, it was always separate, and there was always loads more customs and difficulties that you had to go through for a European citizen living in Europe to come to the UK.
But I have an interesting question to pose. Do you think it's useful for our immigration system? Because obviously, with no longer being EU, we don't have to accept EU citizens. So we've opened up. Obviously, there's a new immigration system of like kind of I think it's a 10-point system or 100-point system. We have to get so many points, and then you can come in, like the Australia side immigration. Do you think that makes it maybe fairer for the open world? Because it opens the floor to literally anyone, if it's criteria, can come in. Yeah.
I'm not too sure, to be honest, because obviously in an ideal world, I would like free movement of everybody to go wherever they please, but that can't happen. I think that I think it's one of those things you're just going to have to wait and see what happens, because obviously a lot of migrants come from they come through Europe,
Yeah.
and maybe they stay in Europe for a few years before they try and come to the UK, and by that time, everything is complicated for them, and they, you know.
Sorry, guys, just rudely re-interrupting the studio again.
Yes, Oliver definitely did not leave the studio.
Of course not.
Yeah, no, I think it is interesting. I suppose we will see in the years to come the impact of immigration on our economy, etc. I suppose my favourite part of talking about the EU is always the euro. I'm fascinated by economics. So I did read a brilliant book by Joseph E. Stiglitz. I can't pronounce his last name. He's a Nobel Prize winner with economics. But, yeah, very interesting. But the EU is kind of that crux where I think. I personally believe it is starting to fail Europe, because we see the cracks within at least the Greece crisis, which went mental, and it's very heavily. The EU works, I can say, for countries like France, like Germany, like Italy, where they are the main nations of the EU. Yeah. It works for them,
and they're all joined, aren't they? So it makes it a lot easier, you know.
But then you have the nations, let's say that smaller nations, you've like even Hungary, or like
Netherlands. Netherlands is quite big actually.
Even the Netherlands is that impact where they're controlled almost by these bigger nations.
Yeah.
I think that's where I see the phases. I'm always banging about democracy now. I think that's an interesting thing. So, I suppose. What do you guys? Do you have any opinions on the euro?
I do. I think it's an interesting one. I think that it's kind of one of those things that is so idealistic, and everybody looks at it in like an ideal light, because, you know, obviously it was proposed so that trade could be easier, movement could be easier, you know, there wouldn't be disparity with currencies within the union. However, the fact that it was based off the German economy, which has been so rich since the end of World War II, was a stupid idea. It was, because obviously now you've got massive big economic gaps between places like Germany and then Greece. So I just don't think on that wide a level, with that range of different economies in the EU, that they should have introduced the euro.
And I completely agree with what Ailish has said. You know, it's all about everyone on level playing field.
Yeah,
and
it just didn't happen from the start, did it?
We have our lovely kazoo incoming.
I laugh at this every week because it's so unexpected.
Yes, I like to surprise you. So we do have our Q&A from the desks of our listeners. We did pose to them the question: is the EU a broken institution? We got a variety of views. We got a view from Sam, not Sam who was previously on the podcast, different Sam, who said, yes, look at their vaccine rollout versus the UK. That tells you all you need to know. Which I think is quite interesting. It's kind of pulling on the vaccine. So I think it's almost arguing that because there's almost that one the one kind of major overriding factor, that's kind of shows the fallacies within it.
Liv has said, yes, it is. No questions.
I suppose very to the point. Very to the point. We do have another one from Eleanor, who says, yes, since COVID, the whole vaccination stuff has all been about politics, not the people. So it does appear like vaccinations is a key theme. I suppose it's trending in the news at the moment.
Yeah,
with those
can't get away from it.
Can't get away from vaccines, even over here, which we will come on to later with our beautiful Manx politics section.
We'll get onto that. But it is about people's freedoms at the end of the day. And Catherine has said no, and we are foolish to have come out of it. We have spent a lot more on Brexit than we would have done to stay in the EU.
Interesting.
Fair enough point.
I see Ailish nodding there.
I like that. I like the sound of that.
Ryan says it's overstayed its welcome in European affairs, which I suppose it's been there quite a while in different forms almost. I think it's just become that giant body.
Mitzi is just a yeah.
So we've got a few straight to the point answers there, which it's quite nice to see a vast of opinion. So what do we think? Do you think at the end of the day the EU is a broken institution?
Yes, I do, because I think the whole aspect on individual countries having their own governance and making their own decisions is sort of fundamental to an own country, and having a union that overrides it but is unfair to other countries that have to, the UK was paying so much, and so much a week even, wasn't it? It was in the billions, I'm pretty sure.
However, it was only 1% of what the government
Yes.
actually spends weekly.
Yeah.
Is that interesting that with 350 million figure?
Yeah.
It's quite fascinating. They were able to use that and not be deceiving anyone, because we do technically send 350 million to the EU a week, but because the budget's set on a 10-year basis and the yearly they have rebate, we don't actually
send that much.
Even though I'm further Brexit, I will admit we don't actually send 250 million.
Yeah.
And then you've got other points which I'm just thinking of now and I've just forgotten.
Helpful when that happens.
But I suppose I'll move over to Ailish. I've forgotten what I was going to say. I might come back to it.
Later.
It's brain frog.
I would say it's a breaking institution, but it's still fixable, salvageable at this point. But I think maybe after Britain's gone, I don't think it's as salvageable as it was before. So yeah, that's my.
I can actually sympathise slightly with that view. Though there is obviously the possibility that it can go in. It's currently, I'd say, broken, but it can at the end of the day save it by reforms. I think there's always an ability to reform, but I don't think that reform needs the UK. I rather like the idea of a blue passport. So I think we'll leave it at that. Anything else, Oliver? Or?
No, I still can't remember what I was going to say. There was something there, but anyway, maybe in a future episode.
We come to the historical figure of the week. Boudicca, who was a queen of the British Celtic Iceni tribe, who fought against the Roman uprising forces in the AD 60. I must say it's the first time we've had a female political figure of the week. So.
Wow, I commend you both.
Yeah.
Well done.
Well, it was Archie's decision. Archie usually goes for the historical political figure of the week, but even for our episode on feminism, he still didn't pick a...
Wow, that's surprising.
Yeah, I did think he might have gone for Margaret Thatcher, but...
Oh, God.
I must say, the temptation was there, but I thought I'd avoid controversy for now.
I think maybe your guest last week would have walked out.
Yes,
maybe.
Possibly.
Or even co-presenters, well, ex-co-presenters, they would have walked out, most definitely.
Yes, I might have been killed from beyond the grave. So I think she's definitely interesting. She's that British, kind of a very British. I thought EU, we're talking about British sovereignty in it. She's that British fighting against the European kind of Romans, who were
just taking over the world, weren't they?
Yeah. So I think. Interestingly, in these Boudicca's kind of rise to power, Celtic societies were more. It's interesting how the lapse between matriarchy, patriarchy, all that happened. Celtic societies were actually pretty okay with women holding power. Their ladies could kind of participate in politics, which was again not really seen until we go to the 1920s, obviously, or before that when you had the suffragette movement with it. So, do you have any particular comments on Boudicca? Anyone else?
I'm not very well brushed up on Boudicca, to be honest. But I think it's great that you've included her. She sounds amazing.
Yeah. The only comment I would have to add is, for her for standing up for sovereignty is a good way and stopping the Romans from taking over.
But I think most unforgettable feature about her was she had very vibrant red hair.
I remember that from Horrible Histories, actually.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. The joys of Horrible Histories.
Yeah.
And she was very fierce.
Yes.
Which I think was quite cool. So I think, that probably rounds up our short spree on the historical figure of the week, which was I suppose quite a nice one. So...
We now move on to Isle of Man news and current affairs. So, in the past week, we have seen that Alan Shea praises the successful Pride that we had at the weekend. Chief Minister Howard Quayle has been awarded a CBE. And the new roundabout, or should I say roundel, 32 declarations have been made for intention to stand or seek re-election in the 2021 Isle of Man general election. There's been a trip to Ireland for Isle of Man government leaders, the Beerman's review into the Department of Infrastructure, and lateral flow testing amongst young people on the island.
And then for my international news, there was a G7 summit in Cornwall, there's a new First Minister within Northern Ireland, and some major websites did go down. Yeah, that's my funky new theme music. I've never had that before actually for our news.
Yeah, I like it. I think it gives a nice feel to it.
Professional feel.
Yes.
Yes.
Obviously a new GB news channel, isn't there?
Oh, indeed.
Yes.
Forgot to mention that.
Yeah,
yes, GB News.
I thought we'd
yes.
cover that at some point.
Yes, indeed.
I did think it has a bit of a... They tried to go with a formal sort of feel to it, but they're trying to make it informal, aren't they? They're trying to say, oh, we're going for different opinions and we're covering the stories that they're trying to make out that they're going to be better than every other news channel, but I'm not too keen. Yeah, well, yes, yeah, but more than ever.
I think I'll watch Andrew Neil's stuff, and that's probably about it. I'll tune in for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's go back to Isle of Man news.
Indeed.
And the Pride event, which happened at the weekend. I popped down as well. I was performing, and it was. I wasn't there for long, but the atmosphere was really nice, and it was great to see an alliance across the island, and to see many businesses and people in office to sort of to recognise this month as it is Pride Month as well. I thought it was really special, and to have Alan Shea praise it, and for Alan's work over the past 30 years, and mainly at the start of the 30 years, it is absolutely commendable. Alan has really fought for what is for how far we've come. So the Chief Minister Howard Quayle awarded a CBE. Your thoughts, Archie?
Oh, I think it's obviously perfectly right that the exiting Chief Minister and kind of leader of the Isle of Man does receive some sort of decoration for his service, because he has been our Chief Minister for 5 years. Regardless if you like him or not, I think it is nice to kind of commemorate our past Chief Ministers with something. I think that's quite good. In the UK, generally, I think, unfortunately, Tony Blair, I think, stopped this because the Queen had a disagreement with him. Usually they would get knighted afterwards, and before that they get hereditary peerages. So I think it's quite interesting now. Tony Blair kind of halted that because the Queen didn't want to knight him, and it's precedence. She can't then knight the others. So that's quite interesting. Just
in the distance as well, we can see just about to Broadway where the new roundel is. Much featured in social media this week. Many sort of satirical posts about it.
As Michael Joseph said, it's a wonderful advert for Noah Bakeshouse's cinnamon smells.
Yes, yeah. Well, we'll just have to see how it goes, but as the Minister has said, it's here for the long run, so I suppose we'll just have to deal with it.
Ailish, you and I both drive.
I was
how do you know how to get round it when it comes
well,
out?
Most people on the Isle of Man don't know what a roundabout is.
That's so true.
That's so
roundabout.
True.
It's more of a leap
overbound.
Yeah, go
I have
overbout.
a feeling it'll be more easy to manage than Quarterbridge at rush hour sometimes. So I think I will grasp it, or maybe I'll just watch someone else do it, and then I'll figure out how to do it.
I think I'll park somewhere, stand there, watch what people do.
Yep.
But it's really odd. They cut back because they didn't want to open on time. It's originally going to be paved with stone, and I thought that makes sense. But just spray painted white circles on it. It's just a bit like
maybe they are trying to stick to the budget.
Yeah.
Well, it's already over, but anyway. Anyway, we'll then go into the Beerman's review, as that seems quite apparent. As talking about the Department of Infrastructure, it was basically that it needs to be broken up, and they need to sort of maybe create another department. Archie, your thoughts?
I'd say it might increase efficiency.
Yes.
Because department is notoriously slow. I tried to get some data. They said when I was doing the student fair campaign, trying to get kind of reasonable rate for students. They said yes, we're happy for you to give us a fully costed proposal. I then asked, well, can I have the data I require to make this fully costed proposal? Because I need the data, it's not published. Oh yes, we'll go and give it to you. they take so long, and I still not got to, even I was chasing them. So I was tempted to do an FOI, but that then is even longer because they'll find a technicality for it or something.
Of course,
Take too much
they will.
officer time. So what do you think about the DOI?
About the DOI, well, my dad is actually Chief Health and Safety Manager for the DOI.
So we can't
So I can't speak too badly about his job.
But the department is so big, there's lots of other areas you could cover.
Exactly. They are so slow, but I mean, they're taking a crack at it. That's all I can say.
An interesting dinner.
But at the end of the day, the promenade is not actually, although DOI oversight it, there's a subcontractor, which is Alden Construction, which do the most part of the proms. So not everything is held at the responsibility of DOI.
No, but they do choose to employ.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, I think maybe there's a bit of a shortage for labourers that work for them, perhaps.
Possibly, I would say the prom is taking notoriously long.
Yeah.
But I suppose we'll see the day when it's done, and it should, according to what the artist impressions are, it does look nice, to be fair.
I've seen the animations,
But although I did see a person that is sort of campaigned for the equality on buses about being able to use a electric scooter thing. You know how his class is not approved and he's in a big tribunal thing, and he posted some videos of him going along the prom, and there was not many turning points for him to be able to get across the other side of the road. So I suppose.
Well, currently it is pretty.
And there was one problem up at Summerland as well, with a big lamppost in the middle of the road. Don't we remember that? But I don't know whether that's.
I rarely drive that way, to be fair. But I will say, interesting. There's been 32 declarations for the intention to stand for general election so far, and I think there's probably more.
Yes, I think last time there was. Last time I think there was 78 in the 2016 general election, and obviously in the by-election that we've had last year in August, there was 10 candidates for one.
We were originally thinking we'd interview all the candidates, and then we realised to 78 candidates, it would be probably about 78 hours of worth of trying to speak, to organise it all as well. So it is interesting. Do you think is there a problem with having lots and lots of candidates? Do you think it's a good thing?
Well, obviously,
Go for it.
Sorry, I just go for
it.
Hello,
Ailish.
No, Ailish, go first. I only have one point to add, but that'll be.
I was just going to say that I think it's great. I think a wider age to choose from would be excellent, because often we get a lot of the same type of people running for this in and out, year on year. But I think that there's been a massive influx in interest into Manx politics because of COVID, and you got everyone even our age watching the briefings and being interested and suddenly knowing who everyone is. So I think that that's probably compelled more people to
and hopefully it should drive more turnout in the election.
Yeah.
Just across the board. Being more interested.
My one point to make is that before sadly interrupting you, Ailish, was that if we were to have an MP, there would only be one, because an MP across has 80,000
and 100. It's usually about 100.
Lowest I think it might be is 80,000 constituents. So. But I don't think we've got a great parliament, so I don't think that would ever happen.
No, there's no need for UK control.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah. So the Chief Minister and Dr. Alex Allinson, the Education Minister's trip to Ireland. Archie, Anne Ailish, have you got anything to add on that?
Archie, you go first.
Well, I think it's beneficial because it's getting involved within the British Irish Council.
Yeah, I should have said that. Yes,
which kind of the whole point of it is to kind of discuss with other members. We saw, interestingly, 3FM posting about only news website I could find, which was actually saying there's outrage.
Yes, and they never usually post things first. They usually wait for all. They usually pinch their news from other sources.
Interesting, they posted it.
Just gonna put that.
We're
out
on Manx Radio, the nation station. So. Interestingly, on their article, they posted a picture and it said, Chief Minister with Edward Poots, new GUP leader. I looked at the photo and it's the Jersey Minister of External Relations, because they didn't put the whole photo in on Twitter. I didn't put the whole photo because it was Chief Minister, then the Jersey External Relations Minister, and then Edward Poots. And I thought it was very fascinating. They cropped it so it looked like the Jersey External Minister was the new GUP. I thought that was crazy.
There's also been many comments about Howard and Alex in the room with Arlene Foster.
Yeah, saying that she shouldn't have met with them, and there's outrage about the government having a pride thing on its logo. But my main point is Arlene Foster at that point, she only stepped down on Monday, was currently the First Minister of Northern Ireland. Edward Poots, I think that is his first name, I've got the rights. It was the new incoming DUP leader who kind of had control over who appoints as, who puts forward to be approved for the new First Minister. They are important people to have contacts with because they are our nearest neighbours and they're one of our Celtic neighbours. So I don't see any problem with having the meeting when you have the British-Irish Council Summit. I thought it was quite interesting.
Yes, well, I suppose people known for their quite sort of notorious, quite extremist views.
Which she doesn't necessarily agree with.
Yes, and you can, and you will argue, as I know you will, freedom of speech and all that. But they didn't actually mention, obviously, there's also lots of photos with it being the British-Irish Council meeting. Michael Gove was there as well. He's been in the news recently.
Yeah. How about what do you think, Ailish?
About the
the
trip
summit,
to Ireland. Oh, the summit.
The
trip,
the British
trip, yeah.
British
okay.
Council.
Yeah.
Obviously,
Or the trip, yeah.
Yeah,
The trip's part of it.
Howard's sort of been. It's a great way for the Isle of Man to go on the stage, isn't
Yeah,
it?
I think it's great. We're getting a voice, in places that maybe wouldn't really have a voice. And it's funny because COVID has kind of turned this little island into something interesting, if you know what I mean. In a way it has. And we've had people jealous of the way that we've been living, so I think it's great. We've got Mr. Quayle going across with Mr. Allison.
Yeah, I forgot to add that from that from the Manx delegation, we're also asking the UK about the NHS app for was it? I don't think it was.
It's for vaccinations.
Yes. So that was one of the big aspects. I'm just go and have a look now, see if there was any more points to raise.
In the meantime, we did get news, I think it was today, that they said there will be now, from the 28th of June, Tim will propose us tomorrow. So when this is out, you'll know if it's actually gone through or not. They're going to propose that from the 28th of June, when the borders partially reopen, those who are fully vaccinated and those under 5 can kind of come back and not have to isolate or kind of test with that and then have to isolate. They are free to move. It's now that freedom of travel. I find it fascinating because only children under 5 are exempt. Those from 5 to 18 can't currently be vaccinated unless they're in a clinically vulnerable household who probably wouldn't be travelling anyway. So people like Oliver and I, we don't have our vaccines. We won't be able to travel without the restrictions. But I think it's quite unfair. It's putting that limitation on the youth because they've said, we're not going to vaccinate you, yet the regulators have said it is safe for people like us to take it.
And there's also been this thing the whole time about, COVID's not even that bad for the youth, so I don't know why.
So why restrict us?
There was so much restrictions on the elderly, and
it's because we're spreaders. It's because we get the virus, we don't show any symptoms, and we just spread it.
And that's why they're now reversing their opinion on lateral flow tests, and I shall now be lateral flow tested weekly, I think. From Monday, they're introducing it in secondary schools. So at home, lateral flow testing. So I get to stick a little swab up my nose and the back of my throat.
But is it compulsory or,
They haven't released details. They've not even said how it will be done. How I'll get my lateral flow test. It's been quite vague.
As usual.
Yeah. As usual. What's to be
expected? What did we expect?
But we did see this week the internet go down for certain websites. It's kind of an internet provider. I don't know all the technical terms. It's like Cloudflare. If you have any idea what it is, it's kind of to stop. Obviously, it's not Cloudflare. It's a different internet provider thingy. That's my technical terminology. My dad will probably, correct me later. But going into the internet is kind of thing like Cloudflare to stop kind of DDoS attacks, denial of service attacks, where someone would spam your website requests to then crash your websites. One of those went down, so we saw websites like The Guardian, The Spectator, major news websites all just collapsed. Another kind of important website, even the UK government website, went down.
Tragic.
For like 30 minutes to an hour. And I thought that it does quite highlight the vulnerability of our internet.
Do you know why, Archie? It's because all these young people that are supposedly not registering to get vaccinated. when they said it was the highest it's been throughout the whole vaccination program.
Yeah, so it's fascinating why it's only the end of the in the internet provider person or company. I'm being very technical here as usual. So I think it's quite key because we use internet on a daily basis. We're the youth, so we're almost the millennials use the internet. They're always on their phones. But so it did make me realise how much I actually do use the internet in a day. I suppose you agree.
Until there's a problem, you don't
know
things. You know,
like when there's a power cut and you're like, well, apart from 4G, the internet lines all just gone, and you think, crikey.
Yeah.
We use it for everything.
Even over here, apparently the Wi-Fi is so slow, and I'd never realise it. I'd never even think about it, and then I get people like my friends coming back from university, and they sat there, they're complaining that the Wi-Fi is so slow, and I'm thinking, is it?
I know. I upload something, and then you see someone, and then it upload, and it's like, how's it so quick? And fiber's now rolling out, so I should get fiber in June. Fingers crossed, which I was very excited about because it will like increase my internet speed by like over 10 times. It's ridiculous.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
And I think the actual sort of the you don't realise until you go down onto 3G and you're like, this is what 3G was like.
Yeah, imagine 2G.
Yeah.
And then GPRS before that. And then even like packet radio and then the dial-up internet. Like, I know my parents always tell me, oh, it's so fast compared to what we used to have. It's always back in my day it was...
But it will be for us soon.
It will be for us.
We've seen basically...
the expansion of the internet. In my lifetime, I was born before there's an iPhone.
Yeah.
I don't even realise how actually short the iPhone's been around for, like just touchscreen phones.
When iPads were sort of introduced, you thought these had been around for like for ages, but because we've had such great access to technology, I don't think people appreciate.
Yeah.
And it's like Zoom and sort of things like that now. People wouldn't do meetings. You know, people would spend...
They'd maybe have a phone-in conference, if anything, but they didn't have video.
But now, they'll be used a lot more.
Oh, yeah.
And
we'll come to the... Ailish has a brilliant topic for our... which we'll come to later, which is related to the internet. And then our final item of news is the G7 summit in Cornwall, where we saw Boris fly from London to Cornwall. I generally support Boris.
Disgraceful.
I think this is...
It's disgusting,
crazy.
Isn't it?
He's flown from... yes, I agree for security. Yes, but you make a principle. I go on a train. I work on the train, and he goes on trains other places.
Yep.
Don't fly from London to Cornwall if you're going to talk about the environment. If you're going to talk about other stuff, okay, I'm not going to say it's hypocritical, but it is a bit. It's a bit kind of hypocritical there.
And his excuse as well would
it's zero carbon. I'm environmentalist, so
like,
I would say
if you're going to attack me for taking the plane to Cornwall, let me just remind you that we are leading in,
and we're a zero carbon conference,
and you are the Prime Minister. You set the example.
He sets the tone.
He doesn't, and he does set the tone for disgraceful behaviour.
But
if everyone acted like him, wow.
He sets the tone for swimming in the sea very bravely. He just went. Did you see the video of him swimming?
I did.
He just ran in and started swimming. I just thought. I couldn't do that. I'd be like, step it, clean. And you have to break yourself.
Cornwall's quite down south though.
This is probably warm, It's still at this time of the year though. English Channel, maybe not. Yeah. Lovely place though, Cornwall, must say.
Have you been?
Yes, I have. Yeah. I must say, but they do put the jam and cream on the wrong way on the scones.
Oh, do they?
Yes.
It's cream first.
Yes. Yep.
I always say to people, well, you wouldn't put. Maybe some people do. You wouldn't put jam on toast before you put butter
on. Yeah,
that's my analogy.
So are we all in agreement? Cream first.
Yeah. Well, I actually normally have butter on my scones. I have butter and then I have some jam.
No, but if you were to have cream, like
if I were to,
cross cream.
Yeah, it would be cream first.
See, there we are. We've come to agreements on the podcast for cream and jam for once, which is quite amazing. And if you have a different view, don't let us know because you're wrong. Thank you. Yes. So. We come to the minute of our programme where we take a break and let our wonderful guest talk to us about the TikTok takeover and the intrusion of social media in our society. Go for it.
Thank you. So yes, I want to talk about TikTok, the new app that was it's only been mainstream for about 2 or 3 years, I think, and already it has amassed around 700 million users on its platform, which is quite astounding considering that Facebook has been around for, like 2 decades maybe.
Yeah.
And it's got
ages.
2.2 billion users. But TikTok has only been around for a fraction of that time, and it's on 700 million already.
Wow.
It's insane to think of.
Wow, that is incredible.
It is. Do you both use TikTok?
I do.
I do, yes.
You do.
Yeah.
I've seen some of your
Yeah.
TikToks.
Yes,
Actually,
I get the
Yeah.
wonderful side of Tory talk, as we've spoken
Yes.
about before.
No,
Yes.
I do actually quite like it. I find it quite entertaining.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I suppose it's powerful, isn't it?
It is. It really is, and it's dangerous. It's dangerous. I watched this documentary with my mum, and it was all about children on the app, because there is this as you get with loads of social medias, there is this kind of requirement.
Security
security.
yeah.
I say with quotation marks.
Yeah. You just tick the box. That say
Yeah,
you're
you
over
just
a
like
certain
you just
age.
tick it. Just say yes, I'm 13 years old, and
Has
then you can go on
anyone
and you can
ever
look at
done
any.
that? Does anyone
No one-
obey the rules?
No
You
one has
know?
ever gone
Oh,
on the app and
yeah.
seen that and said, "No, I'm 12. I won't."
Well, I signed up after I was like 30 or whatever, because I only came out like
Yeah.
I only probably signed up about a year
Yeah.
ago. Yeah.
Mm.
But yeah, it's dangerous. It really is, and some of the content on it is just really explicit.
But even
Yeah.
on all social media, it's kind of it gives the mindset. So we
Yeah.
see even like it influences politics, it influences social attitudes to stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I suppose it is, if you are a musician and your music becomes TikTok music, you then suddenly get a wave of views and listens to it, which I
Yeah.
find quite
And
fascinating.
it's people can control. This
Yeah.
is the thing about social media now, is it influences people to do things,
It
and
does.
it controls people, which is serious, isn't it? And it it takes people. It's like, yeah, it's incredible.
It is shocking.
Well, I think that does make time for the aeroplane starts up. Our recommendations. So, Ailish, what would you recommend people watch, listen, do this week?
Well, currently I'm reading a book called Women Don't Owe You Pretty by Florence Given, and it's a best-selling feminist book that came out, I believe, maybe 9 months ago, I think, and it's already amassed so much talk, and everybody has been talking about it. Well, everyone that I know, the kind of people that I know, have been talking about it, and it's an amazing read, honestly.
I neglect to say I haven't actually heard of it.
You haven't?
I haven't. No,
Well,
I shall have a look.
Walk down to Waterstones
Yeah.
later, tomorrow, and get yourself a copy. It's an amazing read.
You recommend it, so I will have a look at that.
Good,
Yes.
good.
I do
Will
like to
he read
read
it,
books
though?
of different
Will
political
Archie
views.
read it? That's the question.
I don't think you
No,
will.
I do read books of different political views. I have actually surprisingly read the Communist Manifesto, and I am going to read Das Kapital by Marx. So it is interesting.
Okay.
How about watching?
I am currently watching a series on Netflix called Lupin, which is French. It's about a French detective. Yeah, it's all in French, but
I'll put the British
you can put the subtitles
Yeah.
on. You can they've actually dubbed it with
I
the
don't like the
English
dubbing,
words
though.
as well. I don't like the
I
dubbing either.
know French is a beautiful language. I
know,
love to
yeah.
listen to French and then read the subtitles.
Yeah.
I tend to have subtitles on anyway when I watch stuff.
So
alone.
do I,
just have it
yeah.
on,
I do that as well, just in
It's
case I
old.
can't quite hear it.
Yeah.
Or I don't catch something.
Yeah. Any listening suggestions?
I struggled thinking about what to suggest for this. I don't know.
I'm like that with reading.
I think we'll leave your listening suggestion at listening to this beautiful episode of PolitiBabble. I think that is overarching. How about you, Oliver?
Well, for listening, another podcast, and they are Alaman based as well. It's called the M Word Podcast, which is very interesting. I'm listening to a podcast at the moment. It's not necessarily, it's usually sports influenced and about people's careers, and usually they're not involved anymore and they talk about their careers, but it also is about personal experiences. So they talk about drugs, mental health, and it's really interesting to hear people's stories and what's influenced them in life. And yeah, watching wise, I recommend you may watch the Euros that are on at the moment.
Course.
Is it coming home then? Is it coming home? There we are.
It's not coming home. It's not.
I'm not going
coming
to say anything.
You're not going to say it. Well, I will tell you. What do our political views say? I did include it in our poll on our story yesterday. We did see are 53% said yes, it is coming home. They have national pride. I think, well, you were included for that, Oliver, so we have your views anyway.
Okay.
And then we had 47 no, that it wasn't coming home.
I was part of the no.
Yes, I didn't vote because, I thought I remained impartial.
But yeah, I think it's probably the biggest sporting tournament to be going ahead post-COVID.
Yeah. It's certainly not coming home for Scotland, I can tell you that.
Well, England have still got to play them, so that'd be quite embarrassing if England
that
lose.
that would be entertaining indeed.
Anyway, yourself, Archie, what are your recommendations of the week?
Well, my reading recommendation is Africa, Altered States, Ordinary Miracles by Richard Dowden. It's a fascinating book. He's a very interesting journalist. It's kind of his experiences in travelling Africa, teaching in Africa as well. If you haven't told, I am a fan of sub-Saharan African politics. So I did find it a fascinating book. Do give it a read. It's very easy to read, and it's all kind of like memoirs of Africa, but it's also very informative at the same time. Watching wise, I do have to highly recommend, if you have Amazon Prime. If not, go get Amazon Prime. Clarkson's Farm. Clarkson's Farm program. It is hilarious, and he's done a very, very good job. Even some Guardian writers actually like it, which it's Jeremy Clarkson's. He's done a good job.
Say,
Guardian.
Is it Jeremy Clarkson's farm?
It is Jeremy Clarkson's farm, indeed.
He has good connections with Amazon, doesn't he? After his
because he
problems
Amazon
with the BBC.
Runs it. And then listening wise, I recommend You're Dead to Me, which is a history podcast for people who don't like history. That's their title.
I did think. Doesn't sound like some classical music.
No,
I did wonder. I looked at that and I was thinking,
You're Dead to Me. I do recommend it. It's on BBC Sounds. It's very entertaining. He usually gets a historian. He's creative horrible histories. Also. He's related with horrible history. Worked with them, and he gets a comedian and then a public historian on, or an expert on topic. It's hilarious content. Yeah, so I do highly recommend that. I think. So I think that actually wraps up under the hour today with our topics. So I think yes. So
it is now time.
Oh, sorry, we ended weirdly there. I think I've skipped out a section, but we'll go with it.
Yes.
So, thank you for coming on, Ailish. It's been wonderful to have you here.
Thank
I must say.
you for having me.
And if anyone out there does want to become a guest on PolitiBabble, do get in touch, and we'll try and accommodate a topic.
Absolutely.
So that concludes the brilliant podcast that we are of PolitiBabble for this week. Join us next time for a discussion about the modern Conservative Party. Leave a like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more. And you can find all the previous podcasts on your favourite podcast providers. Do have a look. And get in touch at PolitiBabble on all forms of social media and let us know your views.
You've been PolitiBabbled.